Hi, so today I'm going to present my PhD project, or part of my PhD project, which is on the neurobiology of language and consciousness at the University College in London. So how important are words? It's a simple question. I'm using words right now to communicate this to you, and you'll use words right back to harshly critique me. But it's proven that the words people use are predictive of college grades, life expectancy, personality traits, mood, well-being, mental health, and most importantly, like, thoughts and recovery from mental health conditions. So I'll be focusing on this throughout my talk. So the model that my project is based around is a model called the holistic model, which stands for the higher order language and inner speech to eye consciousness. So it involves a core set of inner speech production regions that initiate conscious overhearing of words. So why is this model important, or what is the point of this model? This most research that is out there, it confines language to static regions of the brain, which I believe is untrue, because people with aphasia or other like neurodegenerative disorders, they have lost most of their left hemisphere activity, but they're still able to understand and produce certain formulaic language. These expressions must then be stored differently because they're overlearned. I won't go into full detail about what overlearning is because there's a lot of stuff I'm not already, but it's basically like the word telephone would activate auditory cortex more than words that do not have auditory connotations, and red activates a visual color region, and kick activates dorsal motor regions, which are involved in moving the legs, and garlic obviously activates the olfactory cortex. So yeah, the holistic model says that a set of sensory, motor, and emotional regions become situation models, and you engage this looping model without speaking words out loud, but overhearing them. So it's like in a speech, like your unconscious thought, as soon as an unspoken thought is integrated into this model, it's routed back into a loop and it's processed by memory systems, which shape the loop's next output. So looping allows this system of consciousness to use experience as a channel that receives a word-based thought from our cognitive processor and sends it to the memory systems that record it and associate thought. So all of this reinforces the conclusion that it's language itself and its presence within this model that creates extended consciousness and the experience of oneself. So how is this related to psychedelics, which is the important part? Inner speech is conscious thought with verbal structure. Consciousness is the basic subjective awareness or the sense of oneself. Inner speech is said to sustain and modify consciousness, and psychedelics provide insight into consciousness because they actively target the neurobiology of language and memory. They can make, for example, an autobiographical memory more vivid, and they work through activation of the 5-HT2A receptors. This because the agonist action on these receptors causes neuroplasticity, which is when the brain forms and reorganizes synaptic connections. So the brain is involved in this. Neuroimaging suggests that a major part of this is the default mode network, which you've probably heard of because it's talked about in literally like every psychedelic paper that's out there. So I'm just going to go briefly into what it is because you probably already know, but it is a region that enables cognitive functions such as memory. It shows reduction in tasks that require attention, and it increases the baseline. Psychedelics have been shown to reduce DMN activity, which results in ego dissolution or the loss of self-awareness. And dysregulation of neuroplasticity leads to depression and other mental health disorders. But not just the DMN is involved in this, however. There's brain regions that are key to the holistic model, like the language and speech cores, especially in the superior temporal gyrus. They have the highest power to discriminate depressed and anxious patients from healthy controls, and they're predictors for psychotherapy outcomes. So targeting these inner speech cores and the default mode network and prefrontal selection process with psychotherapy following the administration of psychedelics might permit less rigid word meaning and contextual associations. So by this model, the therapy can target networks that include entrenched word connections between his speech and the DMN. So what I'm doing to contribute to this field, the biggest project that I'm working on right now is the Unity project, which stands for Understanding Neuroplasticity Induced by Tryptamines at University College London. It's going to be the world's largest placebo-controlled project to use fMRI imaging on the brain during a DMT trip. We want to investigate how brain networks change as a result of psychedelics like DMT, and to map how these changes relate to cognition, behavior, and well-being. Crucially, we're going to be using naturalistic neuroimaging methods to get insight into brain DMT. So we'll be showing up 4 movies to participants in an fMRI scanner, which is more naturalistic than doing the usual tasks from fMRI. So what we aim to do, there'll be 60 healthy volunteers, and then we also have a heavy drinking arm. So we aim to like show if it can help with drinking as well. And the primary outcomes that we hope to achieve are neurobiological changes in the network architecture of the brain, changes of inner speech and general well-being, and a reduction in drinking behavior. So we're going to scan people's brains 1 week before they experience DMT and whilst they experience DMT, and then 1 week after the DMT trip. So we'll be comparing the brain under DMT to the brain sober while watching feature-length movies. So this allows us to work out how real-world sensory processing occurs in each individual, and then comparing it to the activity of the rich internal sensory landscape or the inner movie that plays out while watching DMT. And yeah, we'll also be assessing whether DMT can help heavy drinkers to change their relationship with alcohol. There's also another study I'm involved in. It's an unnamed study on 5-MeO-DMT, which is the inhalable version of DMT. And in this study, we just want to use 120 healthy adults and some hazardous drinkers. It's going to be the first randomized graded dose assessment of single dose inhaled 5-MeO-DMT on the reconsolidation of maladaptive memory and harmful drinking. And it's going to be the first hypothesis-driven assessment of mechanisms of therapeutic change following 5-MeO-DMT. It's going to be the most comprehensive long-term assessment of monetary, ecologically embedded changes in speech, mood, cognition, and behavior. And it will identify potential biomarkers of change in psychological well-being following 5-MeO-DMT. And yeah, so to conclude, if you take anything away from this, just say that words do not simply exist to just report our thoughts and cognitions. Our words are actually our thoughts and cognitions. And we produce and vocalize our thoughts with inner speech, and we use this. But so therapy can target the networks that are included in this, between inner speech cores, the connected peripheries, the default mode regions, and lateral prefrontal regions. So to select appropriate responses, and neuroplasticity in some or all of these connections can be the target of psychotherapy. So here's the part where I shamefully plug our links in our team. Thanks to my supervisor, Jeremy Skipper, my secondary supervisor, Rami Dawes, and the rest of the Unity Lab at UCL. So basically, we're currently crowdfunding for the Unity study. There's a link here. We offer some cool prizes, and we have some artists that are collaborated with us, if you can tell by all of the like cool artwork that's been included. So you can get rewards for donating to our study. And it really helps. And we're down with the kids, and we accept Bitcoin and Ethereum now. So yeah, we have a website. We're on all the social media and the Twitter. So yeah, thank you for listening to my talk. I hope that it shed some light on any of the psychedelic experience. And yeah, thank you for hearing me out. I would also like to thank Lido and UKRI for funding my research and allowing me to make this possible. And if you have any further questions, you can email me at regan.harle.20@ucl.ac.uk.